sleep aids,
Yeah.
Ambien, Lunesta, good, bad. Tell me about what your thoughts are on those.
Yeah, on public record, I've not been the biggest advocate of that class of drugs.
Can you be clear about this?
Yeah, so essentially we're now in Web 3.0 in terms of sleep medications. Web 1.0, those were the benzodiazepines, temazepam, Valium, and then came the second generation, which were Lunesta, the Ambien drugs.
Yeah.
Both of those work by essentially tickling an inhibitory receptor in the cortex called the GABA system.
Mm-hmm.
It's lights out, red light, stop traffic.
Right.
So what those drugs would do, they are called sedative hypnotics. And sedation is not sleep. Now, when you take an Ambien, I'm not going to argue that you're awake. You're clearly not awake. But to argue that you're in naturalistic sleep, if I were to show you the electrical signature, is not the same.
Yeah.
So we conflate sedation with sleep on those drugs. Now there is a new class of medications, and it's the first class of medications that, in truth, I've actually been publicly advocating for. They're called the DORAs drugs.
Yes.
D-O-R-A, small s. And we'll speak a little bit about that when we actually look at some of your wonderful data. But these drugs they work in a very different way. Instead of going up to your cortex and baseball bat-like, just knocking it out, these DORAs drugs, and there are 3 FDA approved, things like Belsomra, Dayvigo, they act like a set of elegant chemical fingers. They go down towards the brainstem, and they just dial down the volume button on wakefulness, and then they step back, and they allow the antithesis of wakefulness to come in its place, which is this thing called naturalistic sleep. Now,
I've tried it. They're not cheap.
They're not cheap.
Yeah.
Currently, they are not particularly well covered by insurance. It could be upwards of $350 if you don't get insured per month for that medication. That said, though, for some of the chronic insomnia patients that we work with, at the end of a month of horrific sleep, if I were to go see them on that sort of night 30, and say, I could wave a magic wand right now if you gave me $350 and I can go back to the start of the month and you would have far better sleep. Do you want to take the deal? The pain of sleep is such that it actually ends up with a yes answer.
Yeah.
So I think the medication, now, by the way, you could say, well, yes, those medications increase the total amount of sleep. They're also quite good at increasing the amount of REM sleep without disrupting deep sleep. You could argue, well, yes, and so what? Just because you increase sleep, it doesn't mean that that sleep is beneficial or functional. Isn't it just like potentially junk DNA? It's just junk sleep. Show me that it makes you a better individual. That's my question as a scientist. And now there are some great studies. When we sleep, we wash the brain clear of all of these metabolic toxins that we build up during the day, 2 of which are tau protein and beta amyloid, associated with Alzheimer's. And they did a great study. Late life adults, 65 and older, gave them one of these DORA drugs, Belsomra, suvorexant, and they measured the amount of Alzheimer's protein in their blood the night before and then the next morning, with and without the drug, placebo versus control, crossover. The next morning, not only did they sleep longer with these new class of medications, the amount of amyloid and tau protein that had been cleared away from the brain by way of sleep was better having taken these medications. Whereas with Ambien, a study just came out 3 weeks ago, and it reduced it by 40%.
Wow.
So in other words, it's not just that you add sleep, it's functional sleep. It's not epiphenomenal sleep.
If you enjoyed this episode, I'm going to be releasing all of the talks, all the keynotes from the Abundance Summit exclusively on exponentialmastery.com. You can get on-demand access there. Go to exponentialmastery.com.